Hola, buenos dias. That is the end of my Spanish lesson. Thank you, Alex. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you from the US and Canada. And I just want to share a little bit about why we are here. It was through conversation that we received this invitation to come and tell the story of Great Lakes cruising and also our sustainability pledge. That is a key part of what we do. And my journey has been a part of the tourism economy for 32 years, all in Duluth, Minnesota, on Lake Superior in the US. Duluth is a small city of 86,000 people, but we bring in 6.7 million visitors every year. It is our third largest industry, tourism. However, being a native of that area, I have watched our community grow and evolve and learn from our mistakes. The Great Lakes itself is made up of 5 immense bodies of water that represent 20% of the world's freshwater supply. Lake Superior alone represents 10% of the world's freshwater supply. That brings a lot of responsibility, and as we have learned to balance bringing in visitors with protecting our resources, we've learned a lot along the way. Having grown up in that area, I can tell you there was a time in my 55 years where we could not eat the fish that we caught out of Lake Superior and the St. Louis River estuary due to extremely high mercury levels. There was contamination and pollution. 40 years ago, the Great Lakes governors came together and formed an organization that is now called the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Governors and Premiers. We have embraced our Canadian neighbors and come together as a unified organization to work together toward sustainable practices, not just around tourism, but that is where I will focus my comments today. So 40 years ago, these governors brought a vision, and we just celebrated the anniversary in Cleveland, Ohio last month. I would like to share this video that introduces how this organization came to be and the role that my community and my organization now plays as part of that. If we can please play the video.
It was an exciting time. Of the Great Lakes states, 4 of us were new governors. We were 20 years younger than the previous governors. We were all facing huge unemployment, but we also had a commitment to the environment and protecting the Great Lakes. We had so much in common. We got together at a National Governors Conference and decided to proceed to have a conference.
The outcome of the meeting in May was that we should really gather and organize ourselves formally as a council. So the gathering in Mackinac Island in June was the opportunity to come together and formally agree to create the Great Lakes Governors Council.
The governors for Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio to start with. I think we knew we were creating something big that if we did it right would live on and that was important to our people. And of course, Mackinac Island is the perfect place. It's a perfect place to entertain, hold a conference, beautiful vistas.
Well, I remember no cars on Mackinac Island, it was kind of fun because, Blanchard and I would tease each other. The auto industry was huge in our 2 states, and here we were in a place where we didn't have the benefit of autos. The other impression was just how quickly the 6 of us found common ground and recognized that in the really uncertain times of 1983 and trying to come out of that deep recession, that working together was going to be very important for us. That became, I think, a continuing takeaway from Mackinac Island.
We all wanted to make sure we had strong economic development programs, that we worked together, that we got help from the federal government, that tax policy didn't punish us. We also knew that we had a beautiful region. We didn't want it to be called the Rust Belt. That was ridiculous. We wanted to be called the Great Lakes region. And so we were adamant about that. But we didn't have much trouble agreeing on things, working out the details on the Great Lakes Charter. We had a legislative agenda for Congress, for our states, but also we developed a whole program to protect the Great Lakes.
When you talked about the Great Lakes, you talked about the importance of water, access to plentiful water supplies, what that would mean for investments looking long into the future, and also to what it was as an environmental resource for travel and tourism and things of that kind. So I think that was overwhelmingly our number one issue.
You know, what's interesting was this was a transformational time for concern for the Great Lakes. We felt, even though our economies were in bad shape and we needed to improve them, we did not want to sacrifice environment. So we got together and said, we need to protect our Great Lakes from diverting water to the south and southwest. So we developed a Great Lakes Charter, which strengthened the legal case against diversion of Great Lakes water. We also worried about toxics in the lakes. So we developed a Great Lakes Toxics Agreement to agree to go forward and focus on 13 hot spots to clean up toxics. Finally, because we were working so well together, we developed the Great Lakes Protection Fund, which was one of the first of a kind regional funds where we actually pooled our money to a research fund to try to develop the best technology and techniques for cleaning up and saving and protecting the lakes.
All of us, particularly the four first-term governors who were Democrats, Tony Earl from Wisconsin, Rudy Perpich from Minnesota, Jim Blanchard in Michigan, and myself in Ohio, we had a lot in common in terms of what we were dealing with in terms of our own states. And we had much in common with Illinois and Indiana as well. And, you know, partisan differences were not as sharp at that point in time. We can't do heavy lifting in public policy unless we work at it together. At some point or another, we have to look for compromise that gets us what's best for all of our citizens. And I think the Council on Great Lakes Governors does that. I am enormously proud of the work of the Great Lakes Governors Council. And in the addition of premiers is very important because if we can look into the future 10 and 20 years and beyond, high quality, assured water supply may be the biggest single determinant of economic activity for the future.
We're just thrilled the work has continued, and the work has continued with the Great Lakes governors and also our friends in Ontario and Quebec.
I appreciated the experience I had working with my colleagues. It made me a better governor. I think it was good for Ohio. It was good for our neighbor states. I think it's good for the region and for the Great Lakes themselves. It's helped to preserve a unique global asset that we share with our Canadian sister provinces.
And we're happy the current governors are working very hard to keep the momentum going.
Enjoy Cleveland while you're there. Stop by the Rock Hall and enjoy yourself there too.
So that was part of our celebration and recognition of the vision and foresight the Founding Fathers had when they realized collaboration was critical. They needed to reposition our regional economies from relying so heavily on heavy manufacturing and industry, and tourism emerged as a new opportunity for growth. On the screen behind me, this shows the working Great Lakes, and these are the 5 areas that the conference currently works on, the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence governors and premiers. The 2 areas that I work in are Great Lakes USA and Cruise the Great Lakes. Great Lakes USA was formed nearly 40 years ago, right after this organization, our parent organization, was created. That is a collaborative marketing effort in the UK and German-speaking markets focused on bringing leisure tourism into our region and creating a broader awareness of the Great Lakes. Cruise the Great Lakes, which I'm here to speak about today, is only a 5-year-old initiative, and it works very closely with our partners at the St. Lawrence Development Corporation, which is based in Washington, D.C. They are a governing body and a direct division of the U.S. Department of Transportation. So you can see on this map, we are a large footprint in our two countries, representing the third largest economy in the world. And we take that responsibility very seriously. It's also a great visual in showing how we are connected to the rest of the world. Cruise the Great Lakes, as I mentioned, was formed in 2018 with many partners that include cruise lines, ports, tourism bureaus, chambers of commerce, attractions, all working toward a common goal. And while there are several organizations that work in this space, I had the privilege of actually being a member of this organization when I represented Duluth, Minnesota's tourism industry. And now, getting to lead the tourism initiatives, I'm very grateful that I had the perspective of knowing the expectations of being a member. We not only focus on cruising, but we focus on advocacy. And that's what really sets us apart, having a unified voice, working with Customs and Border Protection, working with outdated policies that are limiting our growth. You heard the governor's reference the fact that there have been changes and our laws and policies have not necessarily kept up with the times. Through those efforts, we developed 4 designated ports of clearance on the Great Lakes, which then enabled cruise lines to develop their itineraries. So how do we do this? Well, how do we accomplish this and come together? Our key initiatives are reviewed and prioritized every single year at our annual meeting. Collaborative marketing may sound simple, but we have such a diverse membership. Many large metropolitan areas such as Detroit, Quebec, Toronto, and Chicago. Mid-sized cities such as Milwaukee, Cleveland, Niagara Falls, Canada, Duluth, Minnesota, and Thunder Bay. And very small communities such as Bayfield, Wisconsin, Muskegon, Michigan, and Mackinac Island that you saw in the video. Trying to bring all of our perspectives together into one unified effort has been a challenge, but we've also managed to do it successfully because we're all working toward the same objectives. And we all encourage and focus on our sustainability initiatives, which I'll get into our pledge in just a few minutes. One of the ways that we are able to function is through our membership. We have membership dues that each of these participating partners pays with an annual budget of $150,000 US total. Very small for a very large region. So we rely on generating earned media, and it's very interesting to have heard National Geographic's perspectives because we rely on others to tell our story and have an annual goal of $8 million for fiscal year 23-24. And I'm thrilled to report we just completed Q1 at $8.8 million. We've already exceeded our annual goal. We had several stories that were picked up on international news wires and reached over 232 million people. In Q2, we will pitch our sustainability initiatives to news outlets. Q3, we will discuss and feature destination stories, as well as 2024 cruising season projections. And Q4 is really focused on our season wrap-up and the economic impact of cruising. Other big news stories in our region include this new Soo Lock construction in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. The lock system is really critical in connecting all 5 of the Great Lakes. Without the locks, Lake Superior would not be accessible for not just cruising, but for all of our freight. More than 7,000 vessels traverse the Great Lakes each year, and Lake Superior is the largest freshwater inland port, would not be accessible without the Soo Locks. It's a 3-phased project totaling more than $3 billion US. We are currently in phase 2 of that project, which will be completed in 2030. Other not as large stories, but quite significant, include ports that are in development, various stages of infrastructure to prepare for cruise ships coming to their community, such as Buffalo, New York, which is the other side of Niagara Falls. Bay City, Michigan, a small community, but very ready to welcome cruise ships. And Muskegon, Michigan, that I mentioned earlier, already has one dock that accepts cruise ships, and they are now in the development phase for a second dock that would double their capacity as part of a waterfront redevelopment program. All of those efforts also increase our brand awareness. Being here and experiencing a global presence and a global economy, I recognize that we are one small dot on the map, but we're here to share our story. And we are doing so through a new membership in CLIA, the Cruise Line International Association. For the first time ever, we will be represented at their Cruise 360 conference and trade show in Florida in April 2024. Our partners will be invited to join us there and help inform and educate all of the travel agents that attend this annual education conference. CLIA has 65,000 travel agent members in North America alone. And with 90% of our cruise passengers coming from within North America, for us it makes sense as a way to share our story and get in front of the agents that are helping to book those cruises. So why cruise the Great Lakes? It's a great question. As I mentioned, it's two nations working together and representing such a diverse variety of communities, of experiences, and people, large and small. And the vessel size creates a very intimate experience. Because of the Soo Lock system and the St. Lawrence Seaway, the vessels tend to be much, much smaller. We cannot even though we accommodate large cruise freight or large cargo freighters, we cannot accommodate the large cruise ships that exist. And the Great Lakes typically has between 150 and 400 passengers per vessel. So that brings a unique passenger demographic to our region. They tend to be quite affluent. These are luxury cruise lines that are on the Great Lakes. Due to the price tag, these tend to bring people who are well-traveled, have been around the world, and this is not their first cruise experience. The cruise lines, in turn, have high expectations for unique, exclusive experiences for these passengers that are a high caliber and can't be found in other locations. Our role is to work with our partners to ensure we are offering the highest caliber visitor experience. However, we're also faced with some logistical challenges. We are transforming what was previously commercial ports into a visitor experience. And in some of our larger cities, that's a little easier, but in some of our smaller communities, such as Bayfield, Wisconsin, a town of 700 people, we lack we lack workforce and the resources to accommodate transportation and logistics. So we're constantly striving to help our communities prepare for the growing initiative that we have. Excuse me. This map really shows all of our ports of call in 2023. It also is a great opportunity to show how vast this region really is and the issues that we have faced over these last 40 years as an organization. Starting in my community, Duluth, the farthest west you can go, we experienced tremendous contamination through early years of mining. Minnesota is known as the Iron Range of the country. Taconite is mined up north of Duluth and then brought down by rail to our port. In our port, it is transformed into taconite pellets And that creates what we call taconite tailings, which is the byproduct of that process. In previous years, learning now that it was a mistake, those tailings were directly deposited into Lake Superior for many decades. As you traverse the Great Lakes down to Cleveland on the far south side of our Great Lakes chain, there was a time 50 years ago, not all that long ago, where the Cuyahoga River, which runs right through downtown, started on fire a dozen times due to pollution. I can tell you, having been there last month for our 40th anniversary, they have come full circle. Our waters are pristine, and it has taken tremendous efforts through the work of this organization and others to get us where we are today. These are some of the ships that visited in 2023, and I like to show these because it really does demonstrate the scale of these vessels. Even though they are small, we saw some significant pushback as we worked to bring Great Lakes cruising into a regular scheduled part of our commerce on the Great Lakes. In the lower image, you can see the recreational boats are not much smaller than the actual cruise vessel that's at the dock. In fact, many of these probably are on par with some of the private yachts that you see in the Mediterranean. However, it was still a major issue for us. Just a few examples of some of the ships that have begun operating in the Great Lakes. Viking has the Octantis and its sister ship Polaris, which are both newly constructed, specifically designed as expedition vessels. And the advantage we have from working with Viking is they designed these ships specifically not only to accommodate the lock system, but with the highest or newest technology and the highest efficiencies possible. Each of their ships features a water quality lab on board with scientists that conduct sampling and surveys as they cruise. And the passengers get to interact with those scientists directly and learn and experience what those processes are like and what the results are. In addition, just last month, a travel writer for the Daily Telegraph in the UK experienced the weather balloon launch off of these vessels. And Viking is the first civilian site that is officially designated to launch weather balloons. And once it reaches its 18-mile altitude above the Earth, passengers then get to experience the data coming in real time. A very unique, one-of-a-kind experience. And Viking's season is stretching from late April to early October. But that's not the case with all of our vessels. Ponant operates several ships on the Great Lakes. I actually had the opportunity to tour La Below in the Sioux when I was there this fall. And while it says they have 184 passenger capacity, they typically cap it at 150 to offer a more exclusive and comfortable experience for their passengers. And they only operate in the Great Lakes from late August to mid-October. So a very condensed season before they turn around and bring their ships to other ports of call. The Ocean Explorer is the first Chinese vessel. It was built in 2021. Again, these newer ships have had the opportunity to incorporate a lot of the technology and new sustainable practices into their construction. They operate from early May to early August, and they have 77 cabins with a capacity maximum of 162 passengers. So again, it gives you a sense of how unique these vessels are and the scale that we're talking about. So here are our numbers for 2023. It was a record year for us. And as you can see, we had nearly 25,000 passengers, which was up significantly over our previous 2022. We had 800 port visits, and passenger traffic of nearly 170,000. And what that means is 25,000 passengers visited an average of 7 ports of call. And that generated a tremendous economic impact of $235 million US. The reason it's up so dramatically, the 80%, is we actually conducted a study through one of our universities to create a formula that is very specific, very conservative, and much more accurate in calculating the impact across our entire region. It's important to note our sister organization, Cruise the St. Lawrence, which represents 9 destinations along the St. Lawrence Seaway, just released their statistics this week. They had 43 ships visit those 9 ports, 450 days in port, and the longest season they've ever had, late April through November 5th, when they just closed. That is until 2025, when they will become a 4-season cruise destination, as Ponant will be offering 4 itineraries of 12 nights from January to early March for those intrepid souls who want to experience a winter cruise. Even with remarkable growth, if we were to double or even quadruple our numbers, we are still talking about a maximum of 100,000 passengers. So scope and scale is a critical part of our conversation, but just because the numbers are small does not make it insignificant. If we quadruple the economic impact, we're talking almost $1 billion. That is significant. Now on to our sustainability pledge. As I mentioned, this was really one of the key components that brought our organization together in 2018. The understanding that we needed to help educate our communities and our ports on best practices and also get everyone aligned with initiatives. And they cover these key 4 areas, which I will now go into in a little greater detail. Destination stewardship, so critically important to be sensitive, again, because our communities are large and small. When a cruise ship docks in Chicago, it will not have the same impact on a community the size of Muskegon. However, it's important that we, whether it's large or small, encourage that the footprint that's left behind shoreside is minimized as much as possible. Sourcing local food. Gastronomy keeps coming up in these conversations because on land, we certainly enjoy it, but on water, we also enjoy it. And the cruise lines are embracing this initiative. And cruising takes place during peak agriculture production across the Great Lakes region. So the ships will then try to purchase locally, incorporate a specific signature local ingredient, whether it's a fruit into a dessert, a vegetable into dinner, or in the case of Duluth, we were hosting a site inspection for Viking, and prior to them ever coming into the lakes, and the representative had wild rice porridge for breakfast at one of our local restaurants. It was then incorporated into the menu when they came into port in Duluth because they were able to source that locally. We also believe in continuing in the collaborations in the industry, such as the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, to ensure our efforts are aligned beyond just our region and that we are all working together toward the same goals. Air emissions and carbon reduction are critical. If anything, this is probably one of the biggest criticisms that we do hear, and we are really encouraging the use of shore power where it's available. We want to continue to encourage the cruise lines to explore adaptation for alternative fuels, including zero carbon, and they're making progress. We also encourage the use of other products such as the slick hull paint coverings that are not toxic to the sea life underneath the water, but also help improve the fuel economy and efficiency by more than 5%. And of course, Any type of solar or heat efficiency, such as HVAC, high-efficiency appliances that can capture heat or recycle heat, including hot water that can heat passenger cabins when possible, and LED light fixtures. Wastewater is another major issue, and again, the US and Canada have similar policies. There are some variances between our two countries, but the newer ships, such as Viking, are extremely proud of their efforts in how they processed gray water. In fact, I was recently with a representative from Viking, and he told the story of the captain at a press event showing and demonstrating that their gray water is safe for human consumption because he consumed a glass right there in front of everyone and assured them they're not serving it to passengers, but they could if they needed to. So we are at a level and a time where this is not just a priority for our destinations, but the cruise lines are embracing these initiatives as well. And we also encourage the compliance with the regulatory requirements set forth by international maritime organizations, International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships. MARPOL is much easier to say. Recycling is another key component on board. Utilizing aluminum or glass containers rather than single-use plastic is an easy solution that is being incorporated on most of the ships. And donating excess materials such as leftover food from a breakfast buffet when you arrive in port, or a lunch buffet that's served while they're in port. Having a food bank that is certified to remove the food safely and then redistribute it to underserved communities is really becoming a growing initiative. Onboard recycling is also being accommodated with the capacity to then hold those products until a port is reached that can offboard those materials and recycle them in their port. And as I mentioned, converting waste, including food byproducts, into energy and recycling the hot water to heat passenger cabins. We have many partners who participate. It is a growing initiative, and again, it's voluntary, but we are very proud of those who have signed on to date. And as I mentioned, shore power is really a key way that's been identified for reducing carbon emissions. And the Great Lakes, St. Lawrence governors and premiers recognized electrification really does play a major role. And cruise lines are always at the forefront of really embracing new technology and setting the trend in that path. And now most new cruise ships are equipped to plug into shore power. And this map is very difficult to see the key on here, but any icon that you see identifies existing shore power within the St. Lawrence Seaway and the Great Lakes. As you can tell, there's a lot of room for growth. Some of these represent winter layover locations. Our Great Lakes system shuts down for shipping from mid-January until mid-March, only because the Sulaks freeze. Otherwise, we could continue shipping throughout the year. So we have winter layup locations where the interlake freighters go to receive maintenance and prepare for the upcoming shipping season, and those are identified with the snowflakes. On cruise ships, there are several ports that have shoreside, but as I mentioned, with the new ports in development, shoreside power is being incorporated into all of those projects, as well as the identified icon for cargo and ferries in those communities as well. This will remain a priority for the Great Lakes St. Lawrence governors in the years to come. And it goes beyond just the cruising initiative. Our efforts can't just be focused in one part of our economic sector. So green events, such as the one we are attending here, or blue events, as I've now learned, really emphasize the need for reducing the use of paper and waste. Having the opportunity to plant trees has become a new initiative that was announced at our 40th anniversary celebration in Ohio, where we are encouraging events and conferences taking place across the Great Lakes to either hold a tree planting ceremony during their conference or encouraging participants to return home and do the same within their communities. Recycling and other sustainable initiatives are in play as well. And it is something that now that it has launched, we will begin tracking that impact. But it's important to note that our efforts do not exist alone, just on the cruising side of things, that we really are looking at this across all economic sectors of the Great Lakes. In summary, it is essential to have collaborative marketing and have everyone come together, and not just within a region. Being here has opened my eyes to the opportunities that exist globally. And it is an opportunity for each of us to take small steps that, when brought together, will make a much larger impact. And sustainable initiatives across all economic sectors, as we are doing here on land and for this meeting, cruise ships can incorporate as well, and portside and community destinations that celebrate water and access to natural resources have a responsibility to incorporate these practices and also manage the impact on residents within their communities, to be mindful that sustainability goes beyond just our natural environment. And it takes a committed partner across international borders. And for me, when I initially wrote this, it was international border between the US and Canada. But now I think we can think much bigger, much larger, and globally when we compare what we're all trying to do and what brings us together. And scope and scale. As I mentioned, we have opportunities to grow, but we need to grow responsibly, and we need to manage what we are doing in a way that balances our visitor economy with our sustainable efforts. With that, I say thank you again for this amazing opportunity, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvaro.